Welcome to the 19.9 podcast with HVS. My co-host today is Josh Barnett, one of the owners of 19.9, a retro college apparel company. I am Aaron Meyer. We're also excited to be joined today by Joe Orechio, who works in video content at the NBA. Joe has an expertise in the NBA that can be matched by few others. On today's episode, we're going to talk through our thoughts on the ones who didn't make it and explore the whys and what ifs. But first, Billy Packard knows what time it is.
Jim, isn't it amazing when Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot, 9-inch game inside that three-point line? It's all there. Nice move by Steve Fisher here. Turn it into the 19-9 game.
What's going on, Josh?
What's up, sir?
Not much, man. Hey, before we get started tonight, I want to encourage people listening to give us a rating and review. And most importantly, if you haven't recently been to the 19.9 website, go check it out, all the new items and apparel they've got up for the start of the NCAA season, and just the entire catalog they've got there of retro college basketball apparel. I want to throw it back to Josh here and just want you to give us a heads up about what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, so we have our buddy Joe from the NBA on with us today, as Aaron gave the intro to him earlier. And we were kind of just brainstorming, I don't know what that was, Joe, a couple months ago, probably now.
Yeah, probably about.
Yeah, and his idea was to just kind of put together a list. He's put together some incredible lists, actually, for the research side of 19.9, which we're super thankful for. And as we were just kind of talking, we thought that it might be kind of cool to talk about some of the college studs of the past that, for whatever reason, didn't make it in the NBA. And a lot of times those guys get kind of forgotten about, and it's always fun to revisit and talk about those guys because they certainly have a place in basketball lore, and they certainly are part of hardwood history, but a lot of times get forgotten about because their NBA careers didn't pan out the way they did. So there was like a huge list that Joe put together for us, and through that list, we all kind of picked some players and want to kind of discuss and figure out, maybe not figure out, but just kind of discuss how great they were and why maybe it didn't work out in the NBA. We thought that might be fun, and Meyer was definitely down for it because he's a big NBA nut too. So
that's putting it lightly.
Exactly. You text me in the middle of the night last night as I was watching my Tennessee Vols play, asking me if I'd rather have Ben Simmons or Trae Young in like the most crucial point of the football game. After I told you on Friday my only pure joy in life is watching college football, and then you want to hit me with a Bill Simmons book of basketball question and try to ruin my night.
Just want to know that you did respond, though, so don't act like you don't love it, too.
My first response was, I don't know. Text Joe and ask him.
It was.
Who'd you pick?
Who'd you pick, Josh?
What's that?
Who'd you pick?
Oh yeah, I forgot to put a full disclosure on this. Well, I wasn't betting, if that's what you're asking, on the college football game.
No, who's picked Trae Young and Ben Simmons?
Oh, on the Ben Simmons thing. I took Simmons.
Okay.
Good pick, bad pick.
I don't know. I'd probably go Trae Young, but I think in the long term, maybe Ben Simmons. He's got to learn to shoot. It'd be nice to see if he could finally figure that out.
I don't know. I get scared about guys where we say we hope they're going to learn how to shoot down the line.
I know. I feel like you say that about everybody when they come in the league now.
Right.
They're going to shoot.
I know. And all the Twitter highlights of him pretending that he can shoot all the time.
Yeah, the one shot he hit in preseason where everyone lost their mind.
Sorry.
But that shit was pretty, though.
Oh.
They acted like we had a game winner, though. It was a 3 in like the middle of the second quarter.
So, Joe, I got to know, how did you come up with this idea for just thinking about these guys? What made you think about all these guys who should have made it maybe but didn't?
So, I'm just like a nerd for basketball, really, or sports in general. And I don't know, I was talking to Josh. He said if I had any ideas, to throw him his way for the podcast. And I'm a big college basketball guy. It's always been my favorite sport. I like it more than the NBA even. And it's just always interesting to me, guys that were really good that just for some reason just flamed out real quick. I mean, some of these guys that I put on this list, I mean, like some of them not even a season or half a season or a couple years maybe, or not even at all. Some guys, I'm amazed how good they are in college, and they never even play a day in the NBA. So I don't know. I just figured it'd be something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. I think that when Josh first brought it up, it was during the time when Team USA was playing, and we started talking just a little bit about how different basketball can be, even though it can share similarities just across the different styles and how much difference that makes.
Yeah, I mean, just the way basketball's different nowadays, especially too, because if you watch, 90s basketball compared to now, I feel like now it's pretty much a glorified 3-point shooting contest the whole time. And I feel like some of these guys actually on this list, they were kind of ahead of their time. If they were to come out and, today, they maybe would get a look that they didn't get back in the day. So it's interesting.
The root of every one of mine and Meyer's arguments on picking players and stuff comes back to, are we playing 80s and 90s rules, or are we playing current day rules? And because the game has changed completely, because he always wants to pick shooters, and I want to turn all of my teams into like the Knicks and the Heat of the 90s, where they just go out there and beat people's asses.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're playing today, everyone's got to be able to shoot. I mean, that's just the way it is now. But if you're playing in the 80s and 90s, I want back to the basket, centers, forwards, guys that are like that, who can play in a half-court offense, which today is, like I said, like a kind of a lost thing now.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that. I don't know exactly when it was, but I think when we got on the phone, shit, I can't even remember when that was, but whatever. It was first or second conversation where we were on the phone. I think I was telling you that I think it was you that I watched this old YouTube game, IU Duke in '87 in like the second round of the tournament or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was just like blown away by how fundamentally sound and how good and how like basketball savvy every single player 1 through 10 was on the court, and just like the general understanding of the game of basketball was like just watching a portrait be painted on both ends, and it was just amazing. And I don't necessarily get that, from the game now, because it's just changed. And it's not better or worse or, whatever. I don't care. I enjoy all of it, all the same, really. But it was just kind of like astounding to sit there and take all that in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really different now in a lot of ways. I mean, like, it's still enjoyable to me. I still enjoy college more than pro basketball at this point, but it's just very different now, because I feel like a lot of it's just, shoot 43s and hope half of them go in.
That Meyer loves that strategy, by the way, don't you?
Oh my God! I watched James Harden last night eviscerate my Bulls. I would kill to have him on my team.
I am not a Harden fan, man. I cannot get behind that, man.
See, I actually like James Harden. I like watching him, because when he gets hot, he reminds me a lot of McGrady back in the day. When he gets hot, he's pretty much unstoppable.
Love T-Mac.
Now you're talking Josh's language.
Harden is phenomenal. It's just he's like the epitome of like today's game, and like I don't know, like
a lot of iso ball, a lot of just.
Gosh, oh man,
his step back is beautiful though.
Yeah, well, he's a beautiful basketball player. I mean, he's kind of a game changer. He's almost like a generational type of player. It's pretty astounding what he does, but I need him to stop disappearing in the playoffs, like one game per series in the playoffs, before I fully jump on board there.
It's coming.
You think so, Meyer?
I think so.
All right, so do we want to set up this pod, or do we just want to have our own basic phone conversation that we're taping?
It's probably time to start.
All right, so we were gonna go around. I think the format, like we've been trying to get Joe on for a while now, and it's been 100% our fault that we haven't hooked it up, and we only learned how to get the technology that we could get 3 people on this thing literally 20 seconds before we started filming recording this. So we've had stuff come up, and we've kept pushing it back, but he's hung in there with us, and we appreciate it. So we're happy to have him. With that said, I think the original format that we were going to do was kind of just a round table where everybody picked 3 players, and somebody goes first, throws it out, says their thoughts, and then everybody else can kind of jump in and agree or disagree or hit some other points. I do have a disclaimer, though. I did zero research before we got on here.
I can't believe it.
So I have a disclaimer. I did a lot of research because that's all I do is look up stuff. So I have a lot of stuff.
So I was thinking about maybe just sitting this out a little bit and just chiming in on your guys' players and let you guys go back and forth and pick your six. And because I think we kind of overlapped. I think I poached one from Joe, and I think I poached one from you too, Meyer, when we were doing it. But let's just talk. You guys can go back and forth and talk, and I'll kind of chime in. I don't have to throw my players out there.
It's fine. Whatever you want to do.
All right, Joe. I'm gonna throw it to you. Then you go first.
All right. So the first one that comes up to me that I think is just baffling if you really think about it is Felipe Lopez.
Yes.
Because I don't know, like if he came out, around LeBron's time, I don't even know if he goes to college.
There's no way he goes to college, right?
Yeah, the hype behind him was incredible.
Yeah,
like it was like nothing like you'd ever seen at the time. And he came into college, I guess, the year before Garnett had made the jump.
Yep.
So you go back and you look at his career, and like I was digging through like his stats, and for all the hype he had, he came in. They didn't have a winning season until his last year in college.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I noticed. Like right away, they were just a bad team, and they had good players. They had Zendon Hamilton also was a very good player, but his game, if you look at his numbers, it just never improved really. It was 17 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, shot a kind of low percentage from 3, low percentage from the field, and like I don't know. And it's almost like his hype almost carried him into the NBA because he still was a first round pick.
Yeah.
If you go on his college career, I mean, I don't even know if you could really justify picking him in the first round.
Is he a guy that was surrounded even in college with the wrong types of players? I'm trying to think like what could have, made him better. Just thinking about, we talked about Ben Simmons a while ago, that year at LSU, like people started poking holes in his game. And I mean, I know that we were making fun of his shot a little bit. He's still an incredible player. I mean,
he's absolutely incredible. Ben Simmons is an incredible talent, especially because he's a 6'10" point guard. But I don't know what it was with Felipe Lopez because, like I said, they had some decent coaches there. They had some decent players. I mean, Zendon Hamilton was a very good player. He was an All-Big East player. So, but he also was playing at a time where he was playing against Iverson. He was playing against Ray Allen and John Wallace, and he was a loaded Big East at the time. And I think he was ahead of them coming out of high school, but I think they all caught up very quickly and then surpassed him. And I mean, I don't know what it was. I mean, his senior year, they got our test freshman year.
Yeah.
So that team was decent, but they were only a 7 seed, and they got bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So, how good were they really in the end?
I don't know. Not good enough. I mean, I mean, just thinking about that documentary, watching Felipe, especially in high school, you just see those guys who look transcendent, and then for whatever reason it doesn't translate. I mean, the shooting wasn't as big of a priority. I know that was a bit of an issue for him, but it seemed like his athleticism and just kind of desire to get to the basket and kind of high energy play would have carried him through. But maybe he kind of ended up a little more like Andrew Wiggins or somebody like that, where he's just supremely talented, but just doesn't know how to or when to engage himself. I don't know, Josh. What do you think?
Well, a couple thoughts. I don't really know. Like, it's just so hard to say, I think, when 3 normal dudes that just watch basketball sit and really try to say why somebody doesn't make it somewhere. Joe threw out those stats, 17, 5, and 3 or whatever. Like, that's still incredible as a college player. You know what I mean? It was just that it's that the hype was so much. But, like, I'm sitting here in Evansville, Indiana, on a 99 podcast, wishing that I would give anything for somebody to be like, yeah, he only averaged 17, 5, and 3 in college. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But I think now, like, to the first point, what you guys were talking about, as far as would he come out of school, if he could have, in that era when people started doing it. everything now is so much about your brand, and that's changed in the last 10, 15 years, probably around LeBron's time, where everybody started looking at themselves as the CEO of their own brand, and making decisions based off that. And I'm all for that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But that was kind of foreign at that time. You were still just like a basketball player, and now you're looked at as a walking business, basically. And anybody that is, worth their salt in giving advice would have advised him to bounce and cash in on that, because you only have a small amount of time that you can make that money.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, you said before, Aaron, if he was like Andrew Wiggins, and it's funny, I always get into arguments about Andrew Wiggins, because the argument I always make is that right now, to me, he's a rich man's Ricky Davis.
Yeah.
Like, you get 20 points out of him, he'll shoot a low percentage, he won't play any defense really, and that's just kind of what he is. Like, it's like he has so much talent, he could be one of the best defenders in the league if he wanted to be, and he could be so much better than he is, but he just doesn't. I don't know if he doesn't care, got his money, and he just, said that was it. But I feel like Felipe Lopez maybe was that guy too, that like the hype was so big and he was told how great he was, and then he just never really improved his game, or never really, I don't know if he didn't work on it the way that a guy like, maybe Iverson or Ray Allen did, or he's just baffling when you go back and look at him. And then he got into the NBA and he played, 5 years, but I think his best year he averaged like 9 points a game. He didn't really do anything. And then he was pretty much gone, and that was the last we ever really heard of him.
Yeah, I did remember in the documentary too that he had a pretty severe knee injury, and I think as I looked through quite a few of the guys on this list who seemed like should have been sure things, there was that kind of injury bug that crept in on them, and maybe it was at least a factor in them not being able to succeed in the NBA.
Well, I mean, yeah, injuries now are different too, because back then a torn ACL was almost like the kiss of death or something like that. A torn Achilles, forget it, you were done. So you see these guys now, they come back from a torn ACL pretty quick and they're fully healthy. And so, yeah, I mean, that probably had something to do with it also. If you get one bad injury back, I mean, look at Penny Hardaway's career, how it got destroyed from injuries.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He was like the first microfracture knee surgery, and now people are coming back from that good as gold.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is like probably the biggest tragedy in all of like NBA history, is how that guy's career just got shot down the way it did.
It's really, really depressing. Him and Grant Hill are the two that stick out to me.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Felipe Lopez is, again, like the hype. It's funny if he was around in the Twitter generation, too, how much he would have been getting killed, too. I mean, forget it. He would have been getting murdered on social media.
For sure.
So,
all right, I'm ready. So we talked about this team, but I love this team. I love this player. My first guy I'm going to throw out there is Scotty Thurman. I was blown away looking back through, against, we're talking about stats, the 16 points a game, then 17 points a game, and he didn't even get drafted at all. When I saw that in the spreadsheet, I was like, I didn't even remember that, and I was just blown away by that, because he was seeming to me as like a transcendent talent in college basketball. Clutch, long, could shoot, and I read a couple of interviews where he got some feedback, and coaches said that he spoke to, his coach spoke to some executives, said that he had gotten some feedback that he was going to get drafted, and then to go into the draft and not even get drafted is just unbelievable. And then to never make it, through all the, he played overseas and some other things, but he was one I was blown away by.
Well, he's the one to me where I look at. I remember as a kid, I loved watching him, and then I remember when he came out. He came out to get to the draft after his junior year, and then he didn't get drafted. I remember watching as a kid, being like, his name didn't get called, and I was like kind of shocked, because I was like, oh, he's definitely going to get drafted. Like it was certain. Like the performance he had in college, he was going to get drafted, and then he didn't. I was kind of blown away.
That's funny that you say that, Joe, as a kid, because as I'm scribbling down notes as you guys are spitting these names out, my note said that like he became the poster child for not coming out early. Because I feel like when we were growing up, he was one of the first ones that was a college star that came out early and did not get drafted, and everybody was kind of like, wait, what? Like, Scotty Thurman didn't get drafted? Like, you know what I mean? People were kind of like, the hell just happened here? Like, that guy can really... Now, And then I even remember like talking and being like, well, can he go back to Arkansas then? Like nobody, like
yeah, that's a rule that you can't go back then.
Right, and it wasn't like that wasn't super common knowledge because it wasn't really common for many people to come out, you know, and especially if you were coming out early, it was almost like you were guaranteed a lottery pick. You know, you were that kind of stud because just it wasn't like this today where 100,000 people declare and come out early. And so I just remember that, and I remember just being, like, sad for him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, to never even – I mean, a lot of, guys go undrafted, but they find their way in the league, and to never find even a path into the league. Again, as a guy who could shoot the way he could shoot, too. I mean, if we're talking today, he's going to get a look from somebody if he goes undrafted.
Meyer, let me ask you a question.
What's up?
So we did that retro rewind with Arkansas, Kentucky, what was it, maybe 95 SEC championship, I think. We just watched that whole game and did a whole podcast over and stuff. Did Thurman seem like slow to you though out there? Like, was that his undoing that he wasn't quick at all?
I'm curious what Joe thinks, but when I was reading through some articles, what they said is that it was defensively they just felt like he wouldn't be able to defend anyone in the NBA because watching that game, I mean, he seemed unstoppable as a shooter. Like he caught it, was hitting everything, beautiful looking shot. So I just.
But I will say this, like this is my thing, and this is not a knock on Scotty Thurman because he was obviously great. He to me he stood out in not standing out in a good way on the 40 minutes of hell whole game plan. Like I don't know, he just seemed really slow out there in quickness. So I was just kind of curious if that's what you saw in some of those articles and stuff and some of the research is it was a quickness in foot speed type thing, not being able to create his own.
Yeah, I did see that, but I was curious with Joe. What'd you find, Joe?
I don't know. The way I look at it with that argument, though, is that, Kyle Korver plays in this league still. He can't cover anybody at this point, especially. He's 36 years old. He's slow, yeah, but he can shoot, right? And if you put him in the corner, you put him at the top of the key, and the guy drives and he's open, he's going to bury a three. So it's like, to me, was he slow, Scotty Thurman? Yeah, he wasn't a great athlete, but there had to be a role for him in this league. Like, yeah, he wasn't going to maybe blow you away and score 20 points a game, but as a spot-up shooter, I mean, to me, I feel like sometimes these scouts, they overthink it too much. And it's like, yeah, maybe he won't be a superstar, but he can do this. And if he can do this one thing really well, that's all I really need him to do. You know what I mean? So I guess maybe that was a knock on him, but I just think that knock's it's a little crazy to just be like, to use that to then downplay, well, if you can't cover anybody, then his shooting's useless or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems a very weird argument to make.
Well, you have it's a completely different era though, too. It's not what it is today.
Sure, I'm looking at it from that perspective more of like today even, but I don't know. I mean, again, he was such a good shooter, and when he got hot, I mean, he was pretty unstoppable.
Yeah. Right, but I felt like in that era, especially in that 90s era, everybody, every guard that ever came out got compared to Jordan. Like, is he as athletic as Jordan?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, hell no, he's not as athletic as Jordan. Like, nobody is.
Yeah, the answer was always no.
Yeah, but that was the gold standard was well, okay, if he comes out and we put him at shooting guard, he's going to have to guard Michael. Can he guard Michael? No, okay, well, then knock him down a couple pegs.
Yeah.
And that might just be my perception of it, but that's what I always kind of just remember was if you want to come out and play guard in the 90s, especially shooting guard in the 90s, it was uber athleticism, and that's where I think that thought of mine came from was era with the foot speed and the not standing out as an athlete, and then that just kind of undervalues the shooting and the other aspects of his game because people were always constantly compared to the Jordan shooting guard era,
Yeah, I think coaches, just like people in other professions, get into a bit of a group think, and you got to find the innovators or the guys like Popovich who can just see a certain skill in somebody and apply it in a different setting or in a different way. So I think that the other thing besides injuries that I look and list sometimes and look for trends, and one of the things that I noticed too about a lot of these guys is wondering if they went to the right team, because I think so much about success in the NBA and in life in general is finding the right environment and the right people around you to go along with your skill set. I just think that so many of these guys, I was talking to somebody about Romeo Langford on the Celtics, just think
that was me, dumbass.
Okay, exactly. Talking to Josh about Romeo Langford and how he's just going to get, he's in the G League now, but I don't know if he's really ever going to get a chance just with the number of guards and wings he's behind on that team.
He just got called up today, by the way.
Yeah,
because Hayward got hurt. I think.
Yeah, he broke his hand. Yeah,
he did have a good showing in the G League.
He's good. He should, but he's still gonna have to wait for opportunity, be patient, and that's part of personal character and how much the team values you. But you can imagine if you end up on the wrong team, it could go the wrong way for you too.
Well, we were talking about how it was a bad fit just because of how many similar type players that the Celtics had that are just better than he is right now, because they have the years and experience and all that stuff too. So I'm glad that you remembered it was you and I that were talking about it.
I think you're right though. Fit definitely has something to do with it, because I see that even NFL draft, a lot of these drafts, a guy gets picked by the wrong team, a bad team, bad situation, whatever it is, and that can kill your career real quick.
Isn't that crazy, though? All the variables that have to go into it working out. It's just insane.
That's why I love draft night every year, especially when I'm at work and I'm watching it, because everyone overreacts to it, and I go, half of these guys won't even be in the league in 5 years.
It's amazing.
And probably less than that.
Yeah, and half of them that you think are going to be bad are going to be good, and half the ones you think are going to be good are going to be bad. So.
Yeah. Although I will say the last couple of years the draft has they've done better. At least at the top, it seems like those guys, most of those guys are panning out.
It's funny, I actually read something the other day about how scouts now are starting to get away from the all hype prospects, because they're seeing some of these guys in the second round that are turning out who are 3 or 4 year college players, like a Draymond Green, or even Pascal, who's playing great for Golden State, and they're going, you know what, maybe taking a kid who we think could be a superstar but could also be a horrendous bust, maybe it's better off just taking a guy who I know for 10 years is going to be a good role player for me.
Just solid.
To me, there's an argument to be made for it, because a lot of these all hype players they don't pan out. The Thon Makers of the world.
Oh man, for sure. All right, Joe, who you got next?
So the next one I got is a guy that I watched a lot growing up at Boston College. It was Troy Bell. Troy Bell was a phenomenal scorer, man, and he was 2-time Big East Player of the Year. He's 3rd all time in made free throws in the NCAA, 1st in the Big East all time, 15th all time in points in the NCAA.
Jeez.
1st all time Big East in points scored, led the league in scoring twice. He's only one of 5 players to ever win Big East Player of the Year twice, with Chris Mullin, Richard Hamilton, Troy Murphy, and Patrick Ewing.
Wow.
And he literally was drafted 16th overall by the Grizzlies. I think he was drafted by the Celtics, got traded to the Grizzlies. He played 6 games his rookie year, and he never played a day in the NBA ever again.
Absurd.
It's just, you look at that, and you look at what he did in college. I always thought he was I'm not saying the same level, but he reminded me a little bit of Iverson. He was a small guard who could score like crazy, but he could also defend a little bit. He could shoot threes, he could shoot free throws, he could pass a little bit. And to see that if you talk about it nowadays, where a team spent a 1st-round pick on somebody and they cut him the next year after only playing 6 games.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. As I went back and looked through it, there was no injury. There was nothing major that I found that said, oh, he had a bad attitude or whatever it may be. They cut him in November of his 2nd season, and then he got a couple little tryouts, and then he did a stint in the G League where he did okay, and he averaged 15 points a game in the G League, but just never got another look. And I again, after watching him, in 2000, I remember watching him against Seton Hall, which is my team, and he tortured us in the Big East tournament. We had no answer for him. And you go back and you watch some of his highlights, how good he was. And it's just, again, to play 6 games in the NBA and never seen again, it's crazy.
I used to love watching Troy Bell.
How is he not at least Jameer Nelson? I mean, he seems like a guy who would have at least had that career, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Jameer Nelson, and a lot of people didn't think he would have the NBA career that he had, and he had a pretty good career, all things considered.
Definitely.
But again, I think maybe again, the error, if it comes out today, is it different? I don't know.
Was that when Rick Pitino was in the Celtics? Is there some Pitino thing in there?
He would have been before that.
Okay.
Yeah, Pitino was mid to late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this was I think the Celtics picked him, and then they traded him to the Grizzlies, and then I'm trying that those years that was like white chocolate was there, but there wasn't. I mean, they weren't a great team by any means. So you figure, okay, we got this guy in the first round, we'll give him a look, see what he can do. They weren't a good team, but
Trey Burke's still knocking around in the NBA.
I know, that's amazing. Guys hanging on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Troy Bell is one that I watched a lot growing up, and I just could not understand how that guy just didn't stick, or at least have again, as a role player, bench guy, something.
That's why you talk about being Big East Player of the Year two times in a row, and or 2 years, and that's when the Big East was the Big East too.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was a big conference. It wasn't the 7, 8, 9 teams that are in it right now. Not to say that those teams aren't good, because it's a good brand of basketball. They are good teams in it, but this is when Syracuse and UConn and the Giants were still in there too. So that's remarkable.
Yeah.
You got to wonder if there's a behind-the-scenes story in there that is untold. That there's something, locker room or something else that might have contributed to it.
I mean, I think with some of these guys, there has to be that. Like you probably, again, if it was today, you probably would have heard what happened.
Right.
Be all over Twitter.
Sure.
Some beat reporter would have got a hold of it, and you would know why they cut him after 1 year. But yeah, back then, I mean, it just wasn't, that information wasn't out there really. So
I mean, we heard about Gilbert Arenas and his guns. That was pre-Twitter.
Yeah,
that is true. Yes,
that was also a gun.
Yeah, it's a big story.
So we know that it's somewhere between non-injury, but he didn't bring a gun.
Yeah, might have just been a card game.
There's a lot of speculation on our
behalf. Yeah, narrowed it down to something between gun and injury.
Yeah. But I don't think the GM would have survived either anymore. You talk about Twitter. It's not just the players that you get reported out on. It's that the GM has to withstand the Twitter army just coming after them for wasting a draft pick like that. They'd probably keep him around just to avoid having to talk about it and then cut him quietly after 5 years.
I mean, you can't say anything about Hong Kong either.
Oh my God.
It's bad for business,
That's
Joe.
Right.
Yeah. Don't get me in trouble here.
Yeah. Don't get fired. All right, I'm ready.
Meyer,
I'm ready. My next guy is going to be UCLA. You talked about all Big East. This guy is 3 times all Pac-10. 1995 Pac-10 Player of the Year, 95 National Player of the Year, Tournament Most Valuable Player, 2-time All-American. Easy Ed O'Bannon went with the 9th pick to the New Jersey Nets. A guy that I loved watching in college too. I love that team. I think Josh, you've said something about that team before too, right?
I was obsessed with that 95 UCLA team. But I was always a Charles guy. I love Charles O'Bannon and super athletic. I love Charles O'Bannon and my 3 guys were Charles O'Bannon, Toby Bailey, and Cameron Dollar. I loved all 3 of those dudes.
Well, you didn't like George Zedek?
I love Big George. Love Big George. He was out there 46 years old playing in a 20-year-old man's game.
Yeah.
Yeah, O'Bannon to me is probably, if you talk about hype in college, but he's the ultimate how did that guy not do anything in the NBA? I mean, he was so good in college. I mean, that national championship game with Arkansas, you watch that back, and that guy was he was the biggest star in college basketball.
Yeah.
Biggest star in college basketball.
And really, they handled Arkansas in that game too.
Yeah.
I watched not too long ago. I mean, they weren't phased. They handled 40 minutes of hell, and O'Bannon, Ed was a big part of that. I mean, it didn't phase him, man.
You look at his game too, and you're he can play both forward spots. He can shoot a little bit. He can post up. He can rebound. He can do everything. How does he not at least have the career that Antoine Jamison had?
Is he height lying? I mean, his height on your spreadsheet was listed as 6'9", 220. I mean, that's a big dude too.
Yeah. Again, Another one where I remember watching that. I'm not a Nets fan, but being from New Jersey, I remember watching that. Like, wow, the Nets got O'Bannon. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be a big deal for them. And he was gone from the Nets after 1 year, and I think he played for the Mavericks for half a season, and then that was it. Gone.
Yeah,
that is nuts.
It just disappears.
He's like a car salesman, right, in Vegas?
Yeah, something like that. He's also the reason why I don't have my NCAA video games anymore. So
yeah, he is. I had that written down in my notes, but we might be getting it back, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's coming back around.
Ed O'Bannon might be off the hook for that, because I feel like every time I mention his name when I'm just talking in basketball circles and stuff, you're like, that son of a bitch, man.
Yeah.
I don't have my video games.
Yep,
it's coming back.
Oh, man.
Considering what he was, and he literally was the best player in college basketball, to not do anything. Again, like, it'd be one thing if, he had a 10-year career, but he was, a role player, whatever, fine. We've seen a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, even, like, so of the four guys that have been brought up so far, really, Felipe's had the best NBA career out of all of them, and I think he played under 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So he's like 4 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like we're using that baseline of, like, if he has a 10-year career, it's a different story. Shit, these dudes didn't even have a 2-year career. That's what's crazy to me.
And they're some of the best players in college basketball history. Like, not just best players on their team or best player in their conference. Like, these guys are like icons of college basketball in my mind, and it's historical things.
Outside of maybe Kareem, Bill Walton, and Reggie Miller at UCLA, Ed O'Bannon's probably the next guy you think of.
I agree.
He's up in that top 4 or 5 probably ever at that school, maybe. And what he did for that school, and how good he was in the national championship. And then again, to just be gone and never heard from again. Like again, you look at a guy like Leitner. I mean, Leitner had a great college career, one of the best college players ever, and he still had a good NBA career. He made an All-Star team, which people forget, I think.
Yeah, they do.
Again, you didn't even have that, though. You literally were 2 years, and that was it.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind how that happens. But again, who knows what the story behind it was? Maybe there was something behind it.
It's
Maybe
easy.
he's burnt out. I mean, is that ever a possibility that these guys just get there and get that first contract and just are kind of like, I made it, I'm done, like I'm burnt out?
Yeah.
I mean, that has to happen.
I think you hear that a lot of times, and you'll hear they just didn't love it. I mean, we talked about, I know we're picking on Wiggins now, but I've heard that recently about him quite a bit, that maybe he just doesn't love it. He just, happened to have the perfect frame and athleticism to play the game, but maybe doesn't, it's not the only thing he's interested in, or that's not where his passion is.
Meyer, I know I always talk to you about this, and I always use Russell Westbrook as my example. And I know he takes a bunch of bad shots, and he is what he is. But that guy has millions of dollars in the bank on his contract, and he goes out there and he plays like he hates the other team for 82 plus games a year. And to me, that's what separates the good players from the great players. I mean, like, it's just admirable to me that you can go out there and get yourself up for 82 plus games a year and have all that money in the bank. Like, I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they stay that competitive. It's just insane. And I feel like I'm a very competitive person, but that just blows my mind.
I think it's just some people have that competitiveness in them, and I think for Russell it's unfortunate, because I feel like the pendulum's kind of swung too far on him now. Where a couple years ago everyone couldn't stop talking about triple double every year. This is unbelievable, and now it's like all they want to do is pick him apart. Like, look, I'm not the biggest Russell Westbrook fan, but you got to at least be able to recognize how hard he plays and what he brings to the table still. Yeah, he takes a lot of bad shots. That's just what he does. And at this point, it's probably not going to change.
No.
So, but, you got to appreciate the effort. Like you said, not all these guys are going to get $170, $200 million and go out and play that hard all the time.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
Again, we've said it once, but it bears repeating. I heard Steve Kerr talking about the 2 different championship teams that he played on, or one that he coached and one that he played on, and then the Spurs that he played on. And he said the differences were that on the Bulls, he felt like he played for Michael Jordan, and it was his competitiveness that drove everyone. Their practices were insane. Everyone was just driven by him. And then he said for the Warriors and for the Spurs to a certain extent, they played together, and it was about the team camaraderie that kept everyone going, and just that, like, we're playing for each other, we're working for each other, and he felt like those were kind of the two ways, if you're going to be a winning team, that you can go about it. You have to have somebody that just is the driving force, or that kind of team spirit that carries everyone along throughout that long season.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, though, too. I mean, he's like a dangerous level of competitiveness. I remember reading an article where a psychiatrist was talking about people like him and Tiger Woods and Kobe Bryant. They're like, those guys, like, we're lucky that they play basketball and they're not doing something crazy, because they're so competitive. Like, it's almost like a problem how competitive they are.
God, yeah.
Should be that competitive.
Don't give them access to the nuclear codes, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
All right, Joe, who you got next?
All right, so another one I got. Now, this one, I don't know. I'm in between on this one. I feel like this is a guy who's a clear example. If 10 years later he gets a look, he definitely gets more of a look than he got, and that's Jerry McNamara. Because, to me, when I watch him play, I went back and watched the 2006 Big East tournament where he was just, lighting it up and destroying everybody.
Yeah.
Is he that different from Jimmer Fredette? And Jimmer Fredette was a lottery pick. Is he that different?
Jerry McNamara. Jimmer Fredette could have made this list too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he could have, but the way I look at it, if I'm comparing these two, it's like, Jerry played at a better school, obviously, so he didn't have to, shoulder so much of the load that Jimmer Fredette had to at BYU. So his numbers his scoring numbers weren't as high, but he was a better passer than Jimmer Fredette. He was more of a natural point guard than Jimmer Fredette was. And I think if he comes out, if he's coming out in 2015 as opposed to 2005, 2006, I'm not saying he'd be a lottery pick, but I think he'd get maybe more of a look than he got. He played a couple summer leagues, and that was it. I mean, he never got another look ever again. And then he went into coaching not too long afterwards, actually. But you go back and you watch that guy in college especially, and you're just like, man, this guy was an automatic bucket from three, basically. You just could never leave him open. And a clutch shot, forget it. I mean, he could hit a clutch shot like better than almost anybody. And that Big East tournament in 2006 is the perfect example. He ran through that entire league by himself, basically.
Yeah, he was fun to watch, too. He's one of those guys that I could put on my all-fun-to-watch team. Like, sometimes you feel like you just draft a guy because you want him on your team because people would pay to watch him play basketball. And
he was one of those hateable guys, too, that we've all seen. I mean, if you hated Syracuse, you hated Jerry McNamara.
Oh, man, I hate Syracuse. In the best way.
I love Syracuse.
I mean, it's like a love-hate thing because they've got that just specific style that can drive you crazy, but is also amazing because it works every year.
Oh, yeah, zone defense, the same formula it's always been, but yeah, it does always work.
Meyer's not over the what was it, 2000?
Oh, my God. I'm never getting over that.
Over which one?
The lost Hoosiers championship.
Oh, was it 87?
No, well, yeah.
No, 87.
The one with Oladipo and Zeller and all those guys.
Oh,
13.
That one. Yeah.
Where we had a week to prepare for the Sweet 16 matchup with them, and then we looked like we were surprised Jim Boeheim came out in the 2-3 zones.
Yeah. It's not like we didn't have shooters that year either. That's the crazy thing. Like, of all the teams that should have been able to go up against it, it should have been that team. But
that was a good team, yeah.
We're not going down this rabbit hole, though.
Yeah,
agreed. We'll never get out.
It's a deep hole we're peering over.
Yeah, McNamara was so fun. I mean, he was fun and he was so good, and I loved him. I love those Syracuse teams. I've always kind of been partial to Syracuse. I don't really know why, but I've always liked watching Syracuse play, and he was awesome. I don't know, and maybe I'm going to the well too often on this, but was it a matter of athleticism and people worried about him guarding other point guards in the league? I mean, was that?
Like I said, I could say the same thing about Fredette, though, too.
Yeah.
I could say, and I watch a guy like T.J. McConnell play in the NBA now, and I go, Jerry McNamara was better than T.J. McConnell.
Yeah, I know. I wonder, like, size-wise and stuff, if it's a body type thing. I'm just kind of searching.
Jalen Brunson. I mean, it seems like that there's a lot of those guys that are around that size.
Jalen Brunson,
I know, I do too. Yeah.
But yeah, Jalen Brunson, he's a guy how he went in the second round. I'll never understand because that guy was so good in college.
So good, but not like flashy or whatever. And I feel like people still get blinded by that, especially scouts, and stuff too. And it's an entertainment business, right? You're trying to sell tickets and stuff, so flash is gonna sell. But
you would think at some point, though, it's like the size argument I hear all the time still. And it's funny, even though the NBA is so positionless now, and the Rockets will run a lineup with 6'5" PJ Tucker at center. We still, when the draft comes up, you still hear, well, he measured out at 6'7" as opposed to 6'9". And I don't know if he can play power forward in this league. It's like, are we over that yet? At some point, are we ever going to be over that?
Yeah. It's just a changing of the guard, right? I mean, that stuff is slowly filtering out, but it takes a long time to get that cycle all the way out.
It's got to be. I mean, you have to have new. I almost feel like it's got to be something as simple as like new names for the positions. Like as long as you're calling someone a center, it's hard to not think of them as a 7-footer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the stereotype that comes with the position, right? But I mean, it is. We are in the era of positionless basketball, which is really fun. I mean, it's cool for the tall kids now growing up that they're not just stuck down on the block and have to just be do boring like drop step layups all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the NBA now, if you're 6'11", 7 foot, you got to be able to step out and shoot a three.
Yeah,
most guys have to at this point.
What was I was watching a game the other day, Milwaukee game. They were talking about Brook Lopez, and that when he was at Stanford, he took 3 threes in his entire collegiate career or something, and now he's like
6 a game.
Yeah, but hits a pretty decent percentage of them too.
Yeah, there was some stat they were talking about how his first, I forget how many years it was in the league, he hit like 5 threes, and since then he's hit like 400.
Yeah.
And he just decided, I mean, the knock on him is that he's not a traditional low post player because he's a terrible rebounder, and he was a pretty good shot blocker, but he averages like 4 boards a game, which is baffling to me. But, I think he figured out, if I want to survive in this league, I'm obviously not a great rebounder or anything like that, but if I can learn to shoot a 3, I'll be in this league for a while, and he's figured it out, man. You got to give him credit to add that to his game at this point.
That's exactly it. It's how do I survive? How do I stay relevant? How do I stay on a roster? How do I get that pension? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's true. Get another contract. I mean, right now he fits perfectly with what Milwaukee does.
Ready for my last pick?
I think this is it, right?
It is. I gotta ask Joe before, because this is the guy who went to the Bulls, what he thinks is wrong with the Chicago Bulls this year, because I got all excited about the Bulls this year, and boy, they might be the second worst team in the Eastern Conference.
The Bulls.
That about sums that up.
Why do you sign Thaddeus Young?
I don't know.
What was the point of that?
Boylan, I mean, he's defensive minded, and I'm assuming that they thought he'd be able to come in just instant defense for them.
I think more teams that are young, the way the Bulls are, have to look at what the Thunder did back in the day. The Thunder had these 3 young studs, and they were just terrible for like 3 years.
Yeah.
They were 24, 25 games, and then all of a sudden it just clicked. And the next year they won 50-something games, then in the playoffs. And I think, and they didn't sacrifice those guys' minutes to go sign a Thaddeus Young type player. Like, you're taking minutes away from guys that need to develop. You know what Thaddeus Young is. You know he can help a playoff team, but do you need him on the Bulls taking minutes?
Definitely not.
Need it, like Otto Porter or even a Chris Dunn or Kobe White or whoever.
Yeah.
And I think that's for the Bulls' problem. Like, you got to just let these young guys play and let them develop and be bad for a couple of years.
Yeah, well, they're bad even with him.
I know, that's the problem. But now I got this contract on you that you don't need.
All right. So my last pick is going to be a Bull and a Hoosier, so I'm crossing over my NCAA and NBA loves. Was picked second round, 32nd pick, 19 points a game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, all Big Ten, Rookie of the Year, Big Ten Player of the Year, All-American, A.J. Guyton.
I love A.J.
He's a great player. It really was. I think the knock on him that I saw, I mean, you see with a lot of guys from back from that era, well, can he play point guard? Because he's more of a scorer and small. That's why I think the knock was on a lot of those guys. I mean, even Steph, when he came in the league, like, can he really play point guard? And I think Guyton was a victim of the times of, like 6'1". There's no way he could play 2 guard in this league. And then you watch Lou Williams now light up everybody.
I know, right? Yeah. It just seemed like he could have been like that mold or any of those like bench spark plugs that came up.
A third guard on somebody's team, or
how is he not Jet Terry?
Exactly. But yeah, he was a great player in college, man. He really was. Another one where I was like, as a kid, I remember watching the draft going like, this guy goes in the second round. It always blows my mind when I would see guys that I guess because maybe at the time I didn't understand like the way scouting was either. But like, I was like, that guy's so good, and he goes in the second round.
Yeah.
There's two guys that I saw in person in college that stand out to me, and Meyer and I have a tradition of inserting Ray Allen's name into every podcast that we do. So I think that somebody already mentioned Ray Allen earlier, so we hit our quota. But I gotta put a point of emphasis on it. The two guys were Ray Allen as far as just silky smoothness, and AJ Guyton. He moved at a different just kind of a different speed. Like it's not even a speed. He just kind of glided out there. And he was just so smooth with the ball and such a smooth scorer that those two dudes always stood out to me. Now Ray Allen was probably on just a little bit different level at UConn than what Guyton was, even on the silky smoothness stuff. But Guyton, man, there wasn't anybody. I mean, he was it. I mean, he
never sweats either.
Yeah, just moving at a different pace than everybody else, and it always stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, just really quick to piggyback on that, another guy actually that on that list that was from the same conference that kind of baffled me was Squinty Penn.
Oh yeah,
he was a little smaller, but that guy was like Big East tournament MVP. Then he transfers to the Big Ten. He's two-time like Big Ten Player of the Year. And like you watch him, he was just so efficient. He was so good. And then it's like again, like what? Again, he was a little smaller. He was only 5'10", so maybe I can understand that a little bit. But AJ Guyton, like you said, he did watch him. And if you go back and watch him now, it's funny. I watched a little bit of him recently, and it really does remind me of a guy like a Lou Williams. Like there had to be a role for him in the league somewhere. And in fairness, he got some minutes with the Bulls because they were so bad at the time. So he got a chance, but then all of a sudden, again, like it flames out, and then that's it.
That Ohio State Scooney Penn Michael Redd team was really good.
Oh, really good, yeah. And Michael Redd's a perfect example of a guy who came in the league and they said, well, you got to learn how to shoot. And yeah, that's all he ended up really being good at was he learned how to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear. I think Meyer's having a dogfight in the background of his house right now. Those Ohio State teams when they would come in, because that was when I was in school at IU. So when they would come in to Assembly Hall, those were some battles, man. But those teams were really, really good. And then Michael Redd, right? I mean, he's NBA All-Star. He's playing on Team USA, and then he's just kind of gone too.
Yeah, he had that, I think was it Achilles maybe or something?
Yeah, there was some kind of injury there, but flat out just disappeared.
Yeah, he had a nice little couple-year stretch where he was one of the best shooting guards in the league, and he got a max contract because of it, which is crazy when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, another one, yeah. But to his credit, you know, they say you knock a lot of guys and they come in the league and go, you got to learn how to shoot, and Michael Redd learned how to shoot.
Chandler Parsons right there, that max contract.
Chandler Parsons, my God.
Meyer, are you hosting dog fights at your house right now?
So, turns out my wife was locked out, so the dogs got a little excited because she had to knock on the door. The perils of podcasting at home. I'm not down at HQ.
I know. We got to get you back down here, brother.
Agreed.
All right, well, that's we're gonna wrap that up then, man. Joe, we appreciate you joining us. I know it's been a long time coming. Sorry to string it out so long on you, but we'll definitely want to have you back and get on this thing again. I do have one more question for you.
Okay.
Michigan State Seton Hall blew out. You're going, right?
I'm going, but now with this Miles Powell injury, I'm devastated.
So the whole game has come under this doom and gloom now because you had Cassius Winston's brother die.
Wow.
You know, that news just broke today, and then the injury. That sucks, man.
To say, I've been going to Seton Hall games for over 25 years, and this is like the best chance we've ever had to be like a great team. But I've always, every time one of these years comes up where I always go, I know how this is going to end. Something's going to go wrong. I mean, we had it a couple of years ago we had the 4 seniors, and I was like, oh, this is our year. And we were good, but we weren't great by any means. And I just want to be better than Villanova once. Since 94, 95, since I've been going, we have never been better than Villanova.
Join the rest of the Big East.
Yeah.
Pushing that.
And I thought this is the year for sure. I mean, look, it's not a devastating. He sprained his ankle, but I mean, he's walking around after the game, so hopefully they'll get him. He'll be able to play, but it looks like he's gonna miss the next couple of games probably. But
yeah,
I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, that whole game, man, it was such a hype game, and now it looks like it's just gonna be like everybody else playing. I don't even know if Cassius Winston's going to play. So
yeah, it's like Zion blowing out his shoe and being out like 30 seconds into the Duke game last year.
I mean, that literally, I was depressed for 3 days after that. I was so geeked up for that game and to watch it. And when that happened, like I literally sat there as a grown ass man with tears in my eyes, like this was taken from me. I know
this is not fair.
No, it's not fair. It's completely selfish on my behalf too. But well, Joe, we enjoyed it. Enjoy that game. Check out all the 99 shirts that are there while you're there. Wear your blue and cheer on Seton Hall. Although we have Michigan State as a licensee too, and 2 of our owners are Michigan State guys. But we'll go with the home team on this one.
Yeah, don't. We're gonna lose probably.
Spoken like a Seton Hall fan right there.
Yeah, I've seen this story before. But I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
All right, guys.
All right. Thank you for listening to the 19.9 podcast with HVS, the High Volume Shooters. For more information, check out the blog at 19.9.com under HVS. And while you're there, do yourself a favor and pick up some retro college shorts. Till next time.